Hello and welcome to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value in the markets when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin, crypto, the Bitcoin rainbow chart, and making some sense of where we are in this current cycle with all the recent price action that's been going on. So let's start off with fear and greed. And as you can see, crypto, which was in greed and extreme greed on the border of that just last week, has fallen all the way down into fear. So this was quite a downtrend. And as you can see overall, we were debating on this channel whether or not this spike was a reversal in trend, but this just keeps on continuing with lower lows, lower highs, somewhat similar to what we saw after the peak in March of 2024. So we have seen quite the fall in crypto and Bitcoin and many altcoins. And so what we want to see is somewhat of a bottoming and reversal process with fear and greed. As I get into the video today and explain what's going on with the price action, I think one thing is important to remember, and that is the path to alt season and the rotation. And the path to alt season, in my opinion, hasn't even started yet. And we'll get into why that is and what I'm looking for on the charts. Of course, on our way to each cycle top, which we will see as we talk about the Bitcoin rainbow chart here in a minute, on the way to the cycle top in these uptrends, you are going to get these pullbacks. And right now, this 15% pullback from its recent all time high, it's somewhere around 17 or 18%. We'll take a closer look at that, but something to keep in perspective and why altcoins will bleed and fall way more than Bitcoin. Again, we'll talk about that. As far as the alt season index, surprisingly, still holding up a higher low. So overall, still in an uptrend as far as this indicator is concerned. And going over to the rainbow chart, what we can see is that it's still in the yellow band as it was getting close to the orange band. And I've talked about on this channel, for anyone new here, I've talked about how I'm looking for a cycle top in the orange bands here. But as it was moving on its way up, you can see how it's just been going sideways in this yellow band. So if the rainbow chart is to have some sort of a fall down to the lower end of the yellow band, you can see that would be somewhere around the high 80Ks, 90K, give or take. And then the light green band gets up into that range, 70 to 90K. So something to keep in perspective. And why am I looking for the orange band? Well, that's because we have this phenomena of how the halvings, at least so far, we have increased confidence because of this pattern that we've seen. Each halving goes up a color zone. That's one factor. You can see every halving it has gone up a color zone. And as far as the recent peaks, they've been going down a color zone. So this one was above max bubble territory. And I think it can be better reflected in the former rainbow chart too. You can see before they made some adjustments to the rainbow chart that you can clearly see the peaks come down into different or lower color bands as well. So was above, was into the max bubble dark red territory. This one was in the lightish red, and next I'd be looking at the orange levels. So if we saw a top, some people were calling for a March top. Let's say there's a V bottom reversal. Well, you can see where the orange bands kind of meet in the middle, the lower end of that darker orange band, around 155K, which is an important fib level, oddly enough. But if we believe more in the 4 year cycle, and I think moves like this are going to have people thinking that a 4 year cycle, give or take, is more likely, then you can see the price overall does go up over time. So maybe somewhere in the high 100Ks, 150 to 190K. We'll see. As far as altcoins, as I said, they've fallen quite a bit in the last 48 hours. Same with miners. Miners have fallen between 5 to 10%. Some altcoins falling as much as 30 to 50%. So getting over into Bitcoin as far as what we see here. We see this big red candle. Let's zoom out a little bit first, actually. Let's go over to the weekly. And on the weekly time frame, you can see that right now we do have a sell signal here on the Heikinashis. But something I think is important to remember is look at how much Bitcoin got extended away from the moving averages. These red, orange, that's the 50, the light blue, that's 100, the dark blue is the 200. Whenever it gets quite extended, it's normal to come back and test those moving averages as support. So Bitcoin in this current move up, it didn't get above the 1618, which is at 102K. I was talking a couple weeks ago how I want to see candle bodies close above it, because if it's just wicks, this reminds me of March of last year, just wicks, and we went sideways and down for a bit. So didn't see any candle bodies really closing above, and we're going sideways, and now we have a sell signal. And as far as the Heikin-Ashi candles are concerned, these are some of the best candles as far as trying to find a trend. And so should this trend continue, typically it's anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks, somewhere in there. So don't be surprised if next week's red. But what moving averages do we see here? We see the 20-week moving averages right there. So for everyone saying the sky's falling, I wouldn't be totally concerned unless Bitcoin came down to this 50-week moving average. The 50-week moving average is typically the barrier between bullishness and bearishness. Not that there aren't amazing deals and discounts to be had under the 50-week moving average, but that's when the sentiment changes. So right now, this is just a pullback in a bullish trend, in my opinion. So the 20-week moving averages, you can see they're in the high 80Ks, so that number's popped up again. And as far as the 50-week, if we ever saw Bitcoin break under those levels, you'd be looking somewhere in the mid 70s, maybe high 70s by the time it plays out. Going over to the daily, what we can see is that right now Bitcoin, it wicked down and got bought up somewhat nicely off this 100-day moving average. So again, if we measure out this move, look at that, 16.5%. Let's keep that in perspective, because on the way up, we've had a number of 20% pullbacks and a 30% pullback. So this is still within the range of the smallest pullback that we've had. But because the altcoins have been falling so hard since their high, the pullback seems a lot worse. We'll be talking about that in a minute here. So if Bitcoin is to lose its 100-day moving average, you can see where the lower end of that former channel was, but the 200-day moving average is around 83, 84, 85K. Maybe by the time this plays out, the channel and the moving average would catch it somewhere in there. So that'd be the next area to look for if this support doesn't hold. Now, as far as why the altcoins are falling so much, look no further than this right here. And this is Bitcoin dominance. And well, actually, there's a couple charts to look at that I think are important to remember for alt season purposes. So Bitcoin dominance making a new high as far as this cycle. And what you might see here is I have a fib drawn out, and this fib is just drawn out from the high to the low. So the fib tool, let's get over there on the side here. The fib tool is right here, and when I drew it out from the prior cycle high to the lows that were made after, you can see the 786 is right there at around 64.3. And that's where dominance seemed to stop right there at 64.3. So that could be a top for dominance. If not, the next area, the 888, would be at around 68.5%. Now, what is the shadow of Bitcoin dominance, or the opposite? And that's the Ethereum Bitcoin pair. So you go ETH divided by Bitcoin, and we get this right here. And what do you notice for ETH Bitcoin is that as far as the fib drawn, this one we have from low to high, and you can see that it is coming down to the 786. So there is some connections there as far as dominance and ETH Bitcoin, which is good. And not too long ago, we were wondering, why is ETH Bitcoin falling down while Bitcoin dominance wasn't making a new high? Well, now we have our answer. Bitcoin dominance recently just made a new high. So I think ETH Bitcoin, in hindsight, it was telling us something. And so maybe this could be the low as far as the 786. We could also draw another fib like I did before from the prior high to low. And let's make sure our fib's on log. And we can see, well, that we're right at the 236. So that's holding up. I am curious though, because this trend line has matched the tops. If we go by this trend line, then it's closer to the 236. I know we're moving things around the pseudo narrative here. But so far as the fib from the low to the high, the 786 is matching up on ETH, Bitcoin, and Bitcoin dominance. That lines up. Now, Total 3, we talked about this before, how Total 3, it was right at its former all-time high, wasn't able to break through. So what do we see Total 3 doing? And by the way, this is the total market cap of crypto outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum. Well, it has come down a couple of fib lines, but we have to make sure our fib's on log so we can see it clear whenever we're in between prices. It actually only came down one fib line. We don't have the 888 on, which would be right around here, but you can see Total 3, the candle body on the weekly is resting at that 786. So that's good for now, but if it breaks down, don't be surprised to see Total 3 come down here. But right now, we can hope for support to hold up right there. I'm curious to see what tether dominance is looking like. So whenever we get these bear moves, we see tether dominance move up because you retain your Satoshi value. Tether is a value of $1. And if the markets are very volatile going down, you rather retain your Satoshi value instead of losing money by keeping it in alt. So that's what a lot of large players do there. And of course, tether dominance going up. But when it gets down to this trend line and around there, that is always called the local tops in the market. Going over to Ethereum, look at this fall that it had. So what's curious about Ethereum now, look at where that candle body is. It's right on that trend line. However, it wicked down underneath the 382. It got bought up quite a bit, but it did wick down there. I'm curious to see where the moving averages are. So the wick, it also got bought up not just at the 382, but look at that. That's the 200 week moving average. So Ethereum not looking so great right now. However, if you love Ethereum, we talked about how the discounted levels, the deep value would be down here, and it has been down at this lower wedge trend line level. It's right at it, and there's a lot of buyers here at around 2400 and the 200 week moving average at around 2280. Other charts to remember, there's others, which is the total market cap outside of the top 10 cryptos. But when we go others slash Bitcoin, by the way, this is off log scale right now. We'll put it on log. You can see that when we have it off log, got up to the 1618 last cycle. That was around late 21, early 22, but it's come down to the 236. We put it on log. We talked about this in the live stream last week, and that right now it's been in a channel, higher highs, higher lows. Could this channel be possibly showing us that this is a low that's being made right now? Well, you'd want to see it hold up in the channel, and things can always peak above. We can get a little bit of a fake out, but we do have that 382 there at around 0.12. We're not too far off of it, and it got pretty dang close. I mean, we'd have to zoom in on the daily. So what does this all mean as far as Bitcoin dominance spiking to a new high, Ethereum, Bitcoin going to a new cycle low, others Bitcoin going down? Well, when you see where these peak out, look at the dates at the bottom. That's early January of 18. That's when alt season was finishing in that cycle. May of 2017, or sorry, May of 21. That's when alt season was peaking in that cycle. We can go to our rainbow chart and we can see that playing out. So late 2017 into April, May of 21. As I'm going to keep saying this, alt season cannot happen until Bitcoin is done topping out or in the process of topping out. That's what the last two cycles have shown us. And I would be Of course, anything can change, but I would be very confident that's when alt season will happen. Bitcoin needs to top out first. Is Bitcoin topping out yet? In my opinion, no. It's not in the orange bands here, around that 150K, give or take. Again, it may go to 180K, 150K, we'll see. But as far as even the fibs up here, remember, these are macro fib targets. 155K at the 2618 and the 3618, 210K, depending on when the top happens. We also have the logarithmic. Let's make sure we have one of them turned off. We also have the logarithmic regression on the weekly, which would show a high around 180K. And we're just at the lower end of this too. And so in my opinion, you see how the last couple cycles played out, how it got higher into the log regression band, maybe somewhere around 155K. That would line up. So we have not seen, in my opinion, Bitcoin top out or in the process of topping out. I don't believe that's the top. That is my thesis as far as what I'm sticking to. And as far as Bitcoin dominance and Ethereum Bitcoin and others Bitcoin, what we can see here is that those need to finish bottoming or topping out before we can then move towards alt season. So for all we know, this is not done topping. It may go higher, or this fib is telling us it is the top. Let's go back to Ethereum Bitcoin. The last time Ethereum Bitcoin bottomed out, then we could start going up towards alt season. But remember, that took a while. In the last cycle, that took about here from, and this is the same time Bitcoin dominance peaked, by the way, September 2019. It took about 600 days in this 300% move until it topped out. In early May, that's when alt season was finishing up. Now, bullish case, you can see here that from the very bottom of Ethereum Bitcoin, that was early 2017 in that cycle. And we all know that only took a month. So are we going to see a short flip up for Ethereum Bitcoin where it only takes a month? Or are we going to see something play out for over a year and a half or something in the middle? I don't know. But what we do have to see is a reversal of this trend from others Bitcoin, which we saw before with the channel. Let's go back to that. I forgot the S. My apologies. From others Bitcoin, okay, we see this channel. We want to see it bounce now. We want to see it get above fibs. We want to see it get above the moving averages. Ethereum Bitcoin, what has been the moving average that it just has been rejected by over and over again? That's the 50-week moving average. It's quite extended. So we want to see these form a base and then get above those moving averages and get above some of these fibs. Overall, every time it's gone down under a fib, it'll test, but then it goes lower. Okay, you can see that. It gets under this 236 fib, comes up to the 50, comes up to the 236, comes down. Okay, it has a little bounce, gets to the 50, breaks down. Okay, there wasn't even much of a test there, breaks down. Came up, had a little bit of a peak above the 0.5, came down. So we want to see this start to stabilize somewhere. We want to see it stabilize, whether it's at the 786, the 888, who knows, maybe even lower. But we need to see this stabilize first, and we need to see this break to the uptrend. Once this starts breaking above these fib lines, or the 50-week moving average, or as you saw in others, Bitcoin, if it starts breaking up into that channel, then we can start to make the argument that we are on our way to alt season. But as far as right now, this is still breaking down. And again, maybe this just bottomed. Maybe Bitcoin dominance, that was the peak. Maybe Ethereum Bitcoin, that was the bottom. Others Bitcoin in that channel, that might be telling us it's a possible bottom. There's possibly still room to go, though, if we go to total 3 divided by Bitcoin. This is another one that total 3, remember, is the market cap of all cryptos outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum. Same thing. You can see where these peak out. It's like ETH Bitcoin, very similar to it. You can see where it peaks out. But just look what happened last cycle. that this was bottoming out, total 3, in January of 21. It was making a new cycle bottom January before I had this V bottom reversal here. And so we've seen this break down, and I can draw fibs on here. We can do a number of things. But what's important to remember is that these can turn around quicker than you think. And you have to ask yourself right now, what is your thesis? What is your game plan? Have you been dollar cost averaging in, like I have, into alts, into miners, and then something like this happens? And it sucks. Trust me, I'm feeling that with you. But are you going to look for confirmation and dollar cost average more when we get these massive discounts where alts are 30, 40, 50% off their high? Or are you going to ignore it and not buy? And if you ignore it and don't buy, I'll just compare the last time something similar like this happened. The last time alts really bled out, that was August of 24. That was the last best time to get massive discounts on your favorite altcoins for many of them. So I know these times suck, and on this channel, I talk about a couple strategies I use on when to buy altcoins. One, you try to snipe deep value at the moving averages or fibs, or two, you look for confirmation with the buy signals, MACD, the stochastic RSI. You look for those to flip positive to have confirmation. So you have to ask yourself, if you were buying cryptos, let's go over to Chainlink for a second, or let's just do Ethereum because it's the number 2 one. Maybe you're buying Ethereum here or here. What would be the reason you wouldn't buy here at deeper value or at a bigger discount? If it's within your monthly budget that you're not investing more than you can afford to lose, why would you not continue to buy as it gets lower? Again, I'm all for having a plan or strategy, using indicators that show more confirmation and a hedge against risk. That's great. I think that's smart to do, especially if you're worried about it going lower. Do know you won't catch the very bottoms as much, but you will be playing it safer. So instead of buying down here, look at that last August, you can see the date. You might wait for more confirmation. That's fine. Okay. That's a good strategy to have. But I would just ask you to think about that. Why would you buy higher and not lower? If this is something that you liked before, you should love buying it now. All right. And as far as when alt season is going to happen, again, let me be clear. We want to see this bottoming process finish out. So others Bitcoin, very similar to Total 3-Bitcoin, but this one made a higher low instead. So I'm curious to see if this channel holds. I'm curious to see if the fibs hold up on ETH Bitcoin dominance. If so, that could have been the altcoin bottom, and we might see a reversal from here. There's different fibs and different channels showing that's possible. However, Total 3-Bitcoin, I think that one's showing that there still might be possibly room to go further down. In these channels, they can always get invalidated too. All because we have a nice pretty channel or some fibs doesn't mean they all have to hold, even though there's a lot saying that together. But for this to start becoming alt season, whether it's a year and a half to the top or from the last dip a month to the top, whether it's 2017 or last cycle 2021, we want to see this uptrend, or we want to see an uptrend start with these different indicators. So that's what I would watch for. Wait for these to be done bottoming. And just like I said, with waiting for confirmation, you can add those indicators on here too, like the stochastic RSI. This shows it still has room to go down. And so that's possible that might play out. You can look for bullish divergence on the regular RSI, which I'm sure there is. That you can see higher lows in the RSI, but lower prices. So it's good seeing that divergence right now. We are seeing a bullish divergence. That could take a while to play out though. You can wait for a buy signal, the MACD to flip positive. You can apply those same hedges against risk for these indicators. And you can see that the MACD just starting negative. So some things to look for, all right, as far as how safe you want to play it. But that's what we need to see before we can for sure say we are on our way to alt season. We are on our way to alt season. Okay. This is a local bottom. Me personally, I'm going to look at price action for a few days, and I'm probably going to dollar cost average in some this week if prices stabilize, if I see the stochastic starting to flip up. Okay. I don't want to miss these levels, but I am going to be watching to see if we might possibly roll over further too. So you want to be careful in times like this, but last August, you also didn't want to miss that as an opportunity either. So again, play and manage your own risk. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And I think if anything, this is probably showing us that, again, we've been talking about alt season, probably another year away, probably fitting more within the 4-year cycle, give or take. It doesn't have to be 4 years perfectly. It could be early 26, who knows? But we want to see that reversal in those pairings. The total 3 against Bitcoin, the Ethereum Bitcoin, others Bitcoin. That's what you want to watch for, and you want to see those bottom out and start to move upwards. And Bitcoin dominance, you want to see that one top out and start to move downwards. Okay, this one, let's turn this back on. All right, it doesn't want to show up for some reason. It's taking a second to load. So you want, there we go. We have the 20 there. You want to see this get underneath the 20 and the 50. It didn't get under the 50 last time. And maybe that was telling us something that, hey, it didn't get under the 50 for dominance. So technically, it was still bullish. I thought this was the dominance top. I really did. Right? I'm fine admitting I was wrong about that. But that 50 said, nuh-uh, we have not gone bearish quite yet. But let's hope that this fib holds or this is getting close to topping out. So let me know what you think in the comments below. I know times like this suck, and you also don't want to miss good discounted opportunities if you've already been investing. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I hope things turn around for all of our portfolios. Take care.